All right, we're here for episode 3 of Hail to the Podcast. Joined by me is Daniel Dash, myself, Brandon Justice, both of the WolverineLounge.com. This podcast is brought to you by Big Heads Media, and this is Hail to the Podcast. Dash, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm good. Bye weeks are good. Get to kick back, relax. For anyone that follows along, started my new job this week, so it was a great time for a bye week. Great time to get back into the swing of things there and realize that real life is very much so still there. So,
and tell us what you are doing in real life.
Yeah, so I am going to be a teacher eventually. For now, I'm working in the school at a middle school as an instructional aide, so helping kids out, empowering the youth, shaping the youth, if you will. Hopefully they trust me with that. I mean, they hired me, so you'd have to think so.
You're off to a good start.
So the first question I got from multiple people in the school was, you're the Michigan guy, right? Not because they knew me from like my writing. I guess maybe one or two of them did. But I have a friend that works in the school that kind of, was the instrument in getting me in here. And he had let a lot of them know about it and about the whole ideal. And the principal had asked me, hey, so I heard you're a writer. Yeah, I am. So I'm trying to keep these two lives separate, but that just seems to be impossible.
Oh, yeah.
So the first guy I met, who's the classroom over for me, is a diehard Ohio State fan. We were able to not bring it up. It was pretty much just an observation I made by his decor.
That's not going to last.
I'm sure it will eventually rise to the conversation. But until then, I'm just going to help his children with math.
Mm-hmm. And until then, it seems like we have a new group of listeners.
So welcome, right? Welcome. Yes. All right, guys, we're going to be talking about a lot of things today regarding things all over college football, not just Michigan. It is the bye week, of course. However, there is much more things going on in the landscape of college football than just the Michigan Wolverines, and the bye week gives us the opportunity to cover a few of those things. So as you guys heard, Hail to the Spread, we've been doing it each week. This week we'll expand upon that. We'll still talk about Army. We'll still talk about, we're here and there about the rest of the Big Ten as well. We're really going to focus on the Vegas picks today just to have some fun. It's a bye week. We know that these lines are the biggest topic of conversation across college football right now. Everybody wants to hear about them, and we're here to talk about them. We're here to have some fun with it. So if you guys have questions, feel free to hit us up on Twitter about these things, direct message us on Twitter about these things. We're here to talk about them openly, not just on the pod. And obviously, if you have questions regarding Michigan or regarding college football, we're happy to answer them on next week's episode.
Anything at all, absolutely.
So let's hop right into Army. I mean, it's the Friday, it's 6 days following the game. I think everybody's heard as much as possible about what happened in that game, why it happened, what's going to happen now that game's over with, the panic, yada, yada, yada. So all of that's been covered.
Yep.
Let's evaluate how real that panic needs to be. Army, a team that we said on the podcast before that Saturday game, was a team that had won 10 games in a row. The last loss was at Oklahoma in overtime, an eventual college football playoff team. Yep. And there's a lot of people out there that when you mention those Nuggets, they're like, well, it's a different team. We can't compare the two.
Especially with college sports, though. I think that the program and a structure of such a program like Army, especially one that rides on an identity of discipline from a service academy, I mean, you could put any face under those shoulder pads and really, you're going to get a similar production. So when you give a team like that talent, like Kelvin Hopkins Jr., like a solid defense, like an offense that has committed itself to running the triple option, it's going to be a tough opponent for any team.
Yeah, and it's not to undersell what Michigan did in that game as bad. However, it's okay to still say, hey, Army's not that bad. Army's a good team, okay? I mean, I'm not saying Michigan had no business going to double overtime with them. Don't get me wrong. I'm never going
right.
I'm not saying that's justified. However, I expected Michigan to – I said they weren't going to cover the spread. I think we both said that.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to win by 17. That was where I was at with it. To go to a double overtime is a surprise, and it's not good. However, it's not the end of the world. This isn't like a season like desperate type game where all of a sudden you need to question if Michigan's really going to be good this year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. They did fall 3 spots in the AP poll. That's not a tumble. Had they lost the game, you could be looking at a
19,
8, 9, 10, maybe even a double-digit slide. But I think that when the pressure was on, which I don't think they expected in week 2, but they made the plays in such situations. Some really, really timely plays, and I think that if you want to look at a silver lining in any of this, it is that, and really just one more battle test is going to be under the belt before a schedule of 7 ranked opponents from here through the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
And I think that's where fans are really starting to startle themselves, is that Michigan faces teams that are, on paper, so much better than Army. I don't think it's so much the truth, though, because I think Army is such a tough team to play against. They play through the whistle. They're not afraid to, as we saw, go low on a guy, and they're not going to get flagged for it either, because that's college football, I guess. Targeting is as long as you're not, which a guy was ejected for targeting, but you're seeing a lot more ejections and penalties for high hits than low hits.
Right.
As long as it's not blown after the whistle or anything.
Starting to see a lot of reviews with that too.
Yeah.
The Army ejection actually came after a review. They lost a starting cornerback off of a play that was not initially called targeting.
We wouldn't know this from Twitter, but Michigan did outgain Army by 100 yards in that game. Army was held to their lowest output offensively in how many games? A lot.
It was their lowest rushing yard total since 2017, so dating back to before that 10-game win streak.
Right.
But you wouldn't know that from Michigan Twitter, and the alarm bells were sounding all weekend long.
So don't get me wrong, it's a game that Michigan very much so should have won in regulation, but in the craziness of the college football landscape, sometimes you just have to escape. Oklahoma did it last year and ended up in the college football playoff. That being said, Oklahoma was in a far weaker conference with a far better quarterback in Kyler Murray. Shea Patterson's good, and we'll get to that in our overreactions subject here coming up in a moment.
Yep.
But that was obviously a different offense, a different beast. But Oklahoma's game against Army pretty much dominated it on paper. Oklahoma just won.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say this, I don't think it's comparable, the two games, Oklahoma and Army and Michigan and Army. I don't think it's comparable as far as the offenses go. But I'll say Michigan's win over Army was, aside from the turnovers, was much cleaner than Oklahoma's, because Oklahoma was outgained and they were not meant to win that game, in my opinion, more so than Michigan in this game.
Yeah,
Michigan. Here's the thing, and this is really what this game boils down to. You could pretty much say this, and you can get your point across and move on from that Michigan Army game. Michigan turned the ball over too much. That's it. Yeah. The offense the designs in the first half were so much different than the designs in the second half because of fumbles. Michigan would set themselves up on a nice drive. They would be knocking on the door, and then they would turn the ball over. Mm-hmm. We saw that with the first Shea Patterson fumble. We saw that with the Ben Van Sumeren, whatever you want to say, fumble. No clue why he got that handoff anyways. No offense to him. It just didn't seem like the right time for him to get a handoff, as much as if you're going to run Zach Charbonnet into the ground, right, at least put him into that drive as well.
Right. Well, I think part of it might have been, I don't know if you want to call it punishment, but I think that Christian Turner might have lost some trust within the flow of the game after not just missing, looking the other direction.
Right.
When he
also got mollywopped in a dome at one point. So
that second Patterson fumble was
100%
really
on Turner. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not 100%, but about 90%. Patterson's not in that situation without it, but Patterson should, at this juncture, be far more weary of where his hands are with the football. I mean, I don't know what else warning you need. Also, I'd like to point out for another week that Dylan McCaffrey had one pass attempt that was an incompletion, and people still want him over shit like that. Apparently, that was the difference of the game. Again, Dylan McCaffrey is very good at football. He's going to be a terrific quarterback for this team next year, I believe. Perhaps later in the year if Shea Patterson's ball security issues continue. However, we still have nowhere near enough data to support him as the quarterback one for this team over Shea Patterson. That's just the bare facts.
Absolutely. And, I mean, as much as you want to toy with the idea of making a quarterback change, the way Shea Patterson has been throwing the ball. Yeah, he's missed a few throws here and there. Who hasn't? But in general, it's been impressive. He was 16 of 25 in the first half of the first game, 19 of 29 for the game against Army. That
and they completely shut down the pass game in the second half.
Right. And you look at the first half, like if that throw to Ronnie Bell down the left sideline is, call it 6 inches closer to Bell, that probably goes for a touchdown.
And Bell's got to have that. I mean, there's been a few overthrows to Bell where you can blame Shea, but that one in particular, like, you got to have that one
Seen
way
it
or
in
another.
both weeks too.
Even if you're not in the end zone there, you got to grab that one way or another. That's just that's football. Aside from that, the biggest question of this game is the design and the offense.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: as media, we're put in a tough spot here, and I hate to play victim because people hate that. But guess what? I don't care because in the first game they shut down the offense the whole second half because they're up. In the second game, they shut down the offensive designs because their team couldn't hold on to the ball and the designs they were coming up with.
Yeah.
So, which, begs the question, what's happening to this whole speed and space thing? Well, you're seeing the RPOs work out really well in the first half, right? And even in the first half of the first game as well. I think it's very rarely that they weren't successful. Going over the middle to Nico, going over the middle to Tariq, going over the middle to Ronnie.
Down the sidelines, too.
Yeah, and even with Sean and Eubanks.
Yeah, McEwen did a good job in the seam. I think they like getting Eubanks in open space.
And then you saw it again in the second half just change completely. And the run, I mean, come on. 4th and 3, the handoff to Charbonnet was probably... Look, I've seen a lot of bad play calls in this program the past few years. None worse than 3rd and 8, I formation, John O'Corn at Penn State, play action on 3rd and 8, down like 14 at that point, and just getting destroyed in the pocket. None worse than that. But the 4th and 3, just automatic handoff. Look, if there's anything this fan base is wrong in a lot of things sometimes, and they overreact about a lot. I'm sure you can tell by now.
Yeah.
But that being said, they were totally justified in questioning the reads. Okay, is Shea Patterson making the reads? Are they designed to just be gives? Is he hurt and that's why? Or is he just making the wrong reads? If he's making the wrong reads at this point, and all of those reads that we looked at, or the majority of those reads that we looked at where we're like, hello, you have a lot of green on the other side, pal.
And Eubanks has a lead blocker in most of them.
Why aren't you taking those? It has to be by design. I think Shea Patterson in the Reed game last season had a couple of instances where it's like, hey, keep those. But there was a lot where he kept them. For instance, against Wisconsin for about 80 yards.
Yeah,
against Northwestern to essentially close the game out. Against Northwestern, he kept one. There was a few instances where he did.
Yeah, big plays. He put the confidence in himself.
Is he afraid to keep the ball? Is he making the wrong reads? There's a lot of questions. Guess what? We don't know. And that's why I brought up we're in a tough spot. Because with this offense, we've seen great design, and then we've seen second half just run. I disagree with it in the second game. I agree with it in the first game. In the second game, it's like, hey, man, I don't care who you're playing against. You're in a tight game right now. Being conservative is going to keep you in the same place that it's kept you the past 4 years here, and that's at a 10-win ceiling. Okay, you got to be aggressive, and that's what this whole offense was about. If you're going to have the offense, exercise it. Okay, it's a risky offense. You're doing risky things. You're going to lose the ball. So what? Keep doing it until these reps get your team in rhythm. So by the time you play these ranked, it's Army. You have Nico Collins and Tariq Black, which are about 6 to 7 inches taller than the corners they were going up against. You need to attack downfield. You had Ronnie Bell, and I think Josh Gaddis explained how many explosive chances they had, even though they only hit on a couple of them. They had so many chances. Why stop? You're going to hit on them. Keep going. First down, keep trying for explosive things. Second and short, keep going for explosive plays. Even third and short, with the amount that they would try to go for it on fourth down, or at least lined up to go for it on fourth down. I know it didn't work out, but that would be my analysis. Okay,
right.
Again, this isn't something to lose sleep over. I think it's definitely been an underwhelming debut for this offense. I wouldn't call it something that's worth a panic by any means, because we've seen very successful designs. We've seen them completely shut it down, and we've seen them completely open it up for the first quarter, right? Saturday's blame is, in my opinion, solely on the turnovers. And they were like, okay, we got to mask this up, we got to protect the football, and we got to win this game gritty.
Penalties, too, as the game went on.
The
3 or 4
the discipline has
starts.
been bad. The discipline has been very bad.
Illegal substitutions.
Which is another thing. It's rhythm. You have to get them. How are you going to run the ball 33 times and have like 15 of those just be up the middle scampers when you're going to go to the likes of Wisconsin, you're going to play Notre Dame, you're going to play Michigan State, you're going to play Ohio State, you're going to play now Maryland.
Making the trip to Penn State, too.
Making the trip to Penn State, and expect those to just run cleanly. This is be flawless offense. Now, practice, but you're talking about a game. We've heard in practice how good this offense is, but we haven't seen it in a game come to fruition for 4 full quarters.
Right, and now that you mention Charbonnet's workload and really what he did, you could say that 100 yards and 3 touchdowns is a hell of a game for the freshman. You're not wrong. But when he gets the ball 33 times and Michigan's offensive line is regarded as one of the best in the nation and they're going up against a defensive line that doesn't have a single player over 300 pounds, you need a better push.
Definitely.
And then when you don't set yourself up with such a push, you leave yourself in the 4th and 2s, 4th and 3s, towards midfield as the clock winds down. You put yourself in the bad spot. But if you're in that 4th and 2 and 4th and 3 and you go for it, the offensive line needs to get a forward push against a defensive line that's as small as anything you're going to see this season.
So let's move over to the defense. I think they had a great game. Obviously, we pointed out the output that they had. I know that you want to speak a little bit on a guy that we're both very high on. I've always been high on him. He was surprised. He was actually my first interview as a reporter. It was another kid as well who's at Nebraska now. Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but Josh Metellus was my first one, and was at one point he was just a teammate of Devin Bush's, just like Devin Gill. He was just a teammate, and now he's created his own stardom. I think he's a future NFL guy. He's been phenomenal so far this year. He was phenomenal last year. Talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's someone on this defense who, regardless of opponent, will always grade out amongst the best. This past week against Army, he played 68 defensive snaps, had 3 total defensive stops, had a play where he put pressure on the quarterback, but the 2 most important stats, he allowed a passer rating of just 39.6 when Hopkins threw his direction, and a run defense grade against a team that put the ball on the ground over 35, 40 times of 83.3. That's a guy who you can trust, someone who can step up and stop the run, especially against a triple option. And when they do drop back in coverage, someone you can depend on.
They ran the ball 61 times.
61 times. Okay, so that is...
so even better, right?
An 83.3 is about as good as it gets.
Again, and when Army threw the ball, it was preposterous. I mean, It won Michigan the game, essentially.
Yeah.
Or kept them in it, I should say. Lavert Hill continues to look good. And defensively, this team, here's the thing. We came into the season, and I'm thinking, okay, this offense, if it's what it says it's going to be, I'm still worried about this pass defense. I'm still worried about this interior defensive line, which I still am. We need to see more out of Donovan Jeter next week. He got pummeled at some points last weekend. So we need to see more out of him. I think Dwumfor is still going to be a pretty good guy, especially in the pass rush. I think he's good. You see Michigan moving Aiden Hutchinson inside a lot. Here's my analysis on that. Do it more and put Uche on the outside.
Yeah.
And you're getting, I know that's kind of like the NASCAR package, but don't be afraid to do that on early downs either.
Yeah,
because
and Don Brown on Monday said that he had a message for Uche before the game. Went up to Uche in the locker room and said, today we're going to find out if you can be an every down football player.
And I think he definitely proved that.
Yeah, and I think that at this point, with what we've seen in limited capacity last year and at times this year when he is on the field, this is someone who deserves to be on the field for every defensive play. He is someone who is
8 tackles in his pretty much his debut as an every down defensive guy, which is pretty solid. Aiden Hutchinson, another guy who was incredibly impressive. This D line hasn't. It's not Mo. They don't have a Mo Hurst.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a Chase Winovich who's got a relentless pass rush. They don't even have I think Mo Hurst was as underrated as it gets. So if anybody's to emphasize, they need a Mo Hurst. They need somebody to step up at least halfway there. They don't have a Chase Winovich pass rush wise, but they have a very cohesive and deep unit. You know, they can put Uche on the edge. They could put Hutchinson. They can put Quiddy, and they're finding ways to do it. Jordan Glasgow in the backfield has been impressive. Khaleke Hudson has been impressive. When they're both on the field together, they're getting a relentless pass rush from each side. So they're deep, and I don't think they've ever been this. I don't want to say ever, but I think it's been a while, or it's at least standing out so far how deep they are and how many guys they can get in there and trust.
Yeah, Jordan Anthony too is someone who proved that he could trust.
A guy who came in for Josh Ross and proved he can fly around and make some tackles.
So it sounds like the only place where there's reason to be dissatisfied is with the defensive tackles. So my question to you is, if they can't get pressure or clog the middle against Wisconsin, namely Jonathan Taylor and that ground and pound rushing attack, do we see Chris Hinton? Do we see Mozzie Smith?
you have to think that it's at least in the back of Sean Nua, the defensive line coach, and Don Brown's mind, because I don't know. I don't want to put myself in a coach's mind, but from a reporter standpoint and just analyzing it, you think, freshman, that's not going to work out. It's too early. It's not going to be as good as what we think it's going to be. It's going to take time. Sometimes you just got to shoot the gun. You get 4 games to try it out in this new rule. So why waste it?
And is there a better game to try it out than when your defensive tackles are struggling and you're facing the country's best running back?
Throw them into the Wolves?
Yeah.
Put them in the pool with the Sharks?
See what they got. This is a 5-star and a high 4-star. So.
I think it might be time to at least give them a couple of reps. We'll see how it goes. All I know is Ben Mason continues to struggle. I think he's got a high upside because of how high his motor is, how hard he will work, and how strong he is. But something just intrigues me more about a Chris Hinton guy who can really stuff, be a big man and stuff, and work around the blocks. So that's our Army review. We don't want to dwell too much on Army. Touching a bit on Wisconsin, we'll preview that next week. However, we wanted to bring up that we will be in attendance for the game. Well, I will, at least.
Mm-hmm.
We're working. We'll see what we can do about you. See if we can hitch you a ride with the what do they call themselves? The Highway to Hale crew.
Oh yes.
Max. How do you say his last name?
Markovich.
Shout out to Max. He's probably not listening.
Shout out to all of them. They've done a fantastic job this season.
Don't pepper him too much. Daily egos get a little too big sometimes.
We got winter beat conferences.
Emphasis
tomorrow.
on Teo, right? So speaking of which, anyways, so Wisconsin will be there. We'll be covering the game in Madison. I will unfortunately be traveling with Isaiah Hole, the worst road trip partner of all time. He'll probably listen to Tool. I hate Tool. Don't listen to Tool. Going to try and push for as much Kanye as possible. Probably not going to happen. But I'll give him credit where it's due. He let me listen to a lot last year on the way to Northwestern. And then I drove to Columbus, so I got to pick the playlist for Columbus.
It's an every other road trip ordeal.
Right. So before we head to Hail to the Spread, we're going to talk a little bit about the segment that we came up with. Wasn't really looking towards doing it until the middle of the season, but I think it's a proper time to do it. It's called Reaction or Overreaction. Okay, so we'll go one by one. We've got 3 subjects we want to talk about. And we're going to go reaction or overreaction. So people are very concerned with Josh Gaddis. There is a Twitter account dedicated to him being a fraud, which is...
as Michigan Twitter as it gets.
Interesting. So, Dash, is Josh Gaddis a fraud? Overreaction or reaction?
Josh Gaddis is, drumroll please, the furthest thing from a fraud. If you have eyes and watch Michigan football, you will see that these play designs are brilliant. They are elegant. They are getting receivers open. They are throwing the ball vertically before they put the ball on the ground 8 times.
Sometimes your players just got to play. That's been my best analysis on this offense and the designs. If Shea Patterson doesn't fumble on those 2 drives, you see these things coming to life. You see the space. You see him working the RPOs, and you see it successfully working, and then you see the ball on the turf. And it comes to mind where people are like, well, coach.
And it's not. When Gaddis addressed the media on Monday, he said that they haven't put the ball on the ground in practice yet. So once this thing, and it will solve itself during games, this is not something that's going to be plaguing Michigan into October and into November. And if it is, then we could be looking at a 3 or 4 loss season. But I think that Michigan's going to figure this out. I think that this offense is going to start to really flow. I think the illegal substitutions will cure themselves as they get used to it. It's all something that takes time, experience, and reps to be... I mean, I think a bye week in that sense is a good time to drill it in a little more, but it does take time and rhythm to become second nature, and once it is habitual, it's something that's really going to take off. And while we haven't seen it launch yet, crazy to say that after they've put up 64 points in 2 games, but we haven't seen it launch yet. We will see it launch.
Next up, Shea Patterson should be benched. Reaction or overreaction?
If I had to pick an emoji for this one, it would be the guy crying, laughing. It's like we touched on it earlier. McCaffrey has 3 pass attempts this season?
Yes.
And he fumbled the ball in the first game, fumbled it out of bounds
Right.
for his sake. But it's just
The throw against Army, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
It was an attempt at Tariq Black, and it was the Army guy not blanketing Tariq Black away from being a pick six.
Yeah.
And, again, not to discredit Dylan McCaffrey because I think he's going to be really good. It's really hard to come into a game cold and throw. Look, I think they put McCaffrey in a really stupid spot in that point of the game. He came in for one play, and I get what
Shea was hurt. So he, by rule, because a trainer had to come out, had to come off for a play.
Yeah, correct. So that's actually a good pickup. I didn't even think about that in the moment. However, to throw the ball in that situation, I got the design. The design was, look, on film, Dylan always runs. Dylan always runs on read option. So the design was play action the run and have a quick throw over the middle like an RPO style to Tariq Black. However, Army blanketed Tariq Black. I don't know if that was his highlighted receiver and that's what he was going for. In an RPO, it's typically what the case is if you're going to pass the ball.
You only have an option or two.
Right.
Because of where the blockers are going.
But if I were him, it seemed like he could have ran the ball. So,
and he runs the ball very well. Don't get me wrong. I'm as big of a McCaffrey fan as anyone. The whole program is high on him. Gaddis acknowledged that they're still trying to get him in-game reps. But as of now, it's Shea's team. I don't think that's changing. I think it would take a pretty seismic shift or a sudden injury to vault McCaffrey to a really solid number one spot on that depth chart. But I think a year from now, McCaffrey's probably a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten. I think at 6'5", he moves unbelievably well. He has shown agility. He has shown instincts with the ball. He has shown leadership. I mean, when he has come on the field, he has shown good command on the field. And I think that there is... You could look at it as a good problem to have, but there are so many programs out there that would kill to have the depth in the quarterback room that Michigan does. That doesn't mean that this fan base has to turn it into a problem and invent a problem from something that's a blessing.
it does that so well.
Yeah.
So Shea Patterson being benched is an overreaction. Lastly, in the reaction department, we stray away from Michigan and we head over to College Park. We head to Maryland, where the Terrapins are quite possibly the hottest team in college football right now. They go and win 79-0 against Howard, whatever. We're like, okay, the offense is cool. What's what we expected. They obliterated a team. Great. Then they play Syracuse, a team that had a great year last year, had a great quarterback.
Came in ranked number 21.
Came in ranked number 21. Mike Lockley absolutely delivered the boom on the orange. Shout out to Dino Babers for taking it because that was bad. I mean, what was it, 63-20? It was an absolute obliteration.
Yep. I saw.
Good for the Big Ten. Awful for the ACC. That's their second best team, just getting mollywopped.
Yeah.
I mean, that was bad. And then Miami loses to North Carolina, which, whatever, they're both ACC teams. But North Carolina's supposed to be a bottom feeder. They're in the top 25, but they're going to go 7-5. Maximum. I do not think that they're good.
Yeah.
I just don't think Miami's that good either.
My question to you, going back to College Park, Maryland, hot start. Are we looking at an overreaction to say that they're for real? Or are we looking at a reaction?
Look, Maryland's always been a quarterback that can pass the ball away from having a high-power offense. Josh Jackson, a Michigan native, he is good.
He is the quarterback who can pass the ball.
He is exactly what they need offensively. I'm still not super high in the defense. I think that it did some good things against Syracuse, but I think on the schedule in the Big Ten, Maryland's going to have a lot tougher tests than Syracuse. I think people are overvaluing Syracuse. I think people are overvaluing the win over Syracuse. However, I think that the offense's output cannot be overstated. It was ridiculous. Syracuse, granted it was against Liberty, shut out a team the week before, and then you just put up 63 on them with ease. It was they had 45 in the first half. I mean, goodness gracious.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a reaction for them to be where they're at. I think it's valid for them to say, hey, they're a good team and they're probably going to win around 7 or 8 games. I think anyone who pins them as a Big Ten favorite is an overreaction. Mm-hmm. This weekend, and we will discuss this momentarily, they face Temple in what I think is a, drum roll, hopefully our producer inserts one, is a trap game. And we'll discuss that soon. So I will say this. If you're saying Maryland is a team that's surprising and that they're going to win 8+, and their win total going into the year was 4.5, saying that they're going to go over that, reaction. Saying they're going to win around 8, reaction. Saying they're a Big Ten contender, overreaction.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're a good upset candidate for teams like Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. I think they can seriously win at least 1, 2, maybe 1 or 2 of those games if they really bring their A game. But I think they just rode their high. I don't think they have a better game than Syracuse, and I also think that people are overvaluing Syracuse.
Yep. Big picture for you from what you've seen from Loxley so far, obviously going from Gaddis's co-coordinator in Alabama last year to the head coaching job at Maryland. Then he loses out on Jalen Hurts, his former guy in Alabama, loses him to Oklahoma, comes in, grabs Josh Jackson off the transfer market. He's not working with his guys, and they're still putting up results. Do you think that they become a Big Ten contender in the next 3 to 5 years once he really starts bringing in guys of his own?
It's a great question. We got to see how his first recruiting class goes. I really want to see how that ends up. I think that's the ultimate decider is how you recruit. Obviously, how you develop is the next thing, a la Wisconsin, because Wisconsin, while they don't recruit at a high level, they recruit at a Wisconsin level. They see Wisconsin guys and they take them. So I want to see how he recruits. I want to see the guys he brings in. I want to see if he star chases. And if in the event he does star chase, if he develops them. There's a difference between star chasing and getting really good recruits all the time. I mean, Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State, quote unquote, they star chase, but they also develop them into absolute beasts. Yeah. Look no further than Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Chase Young, those guys, Justin Fields already looking good, those kind of guys.
Jeremy Ruckert so far this year too at Ohio State.
Week
1 at least.
Week 1, right? Yeah, didn't do anything last week. And Maryland, I just want to see how they recruit and what they do with those recruits. I feel like there's 2 ways you can recruit. You can recruit to develop, or you can recruit stars. Only a few teams can do a mix of both. I think you're a top-tier program if you can do a hybrid of both. Nobody does it like Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. But I think Maryland can get somewhere in the tier of like a Texas, where they're able to... Well, here's the thing. Texas doesn't develop well, in my opinion, under Tom Herman at least. They recruit really well. So I shouldn't say that they recruit at the level of Texas star-wise.
I don't even think they do. I think they do a good job fencing off the state. I think they keep some of the top talent from
B.J.
Texas.
Foster is a great name to bring up, who was a guy that was looking elsewhere that ended up staying in state. So I guess Texas was a bad comparison for Maryland.
I think Georgia is a hybrid that recruits stars and develops talent.
Yeah, and UGA just has that. They have such big. You go to Georgia. Have you been to Georgia?
I haven't. Yeah. I've been to Atlanta, but I haven't been to. I haven't been to Athens.
You really don't understand the impact UGA has with their. I mean, that is everything to them. The Falcons are great, and they get some love too, but they love their dogs. You going down with the cough?
The water.
They love their dogs, literally. So it's hard to compare where I think Maryland will end up, but. If they can recruit the East Coast and they can, the DMV area is unbelievable. You think about St. Francis and schools around that area. If they can recruit around there really well, they can be dangerous. Yeah. So yes, to answer your question in all of that, yes, I think they can. Yeah. But I think I have to see the recruiting. If they can capitalize on the environment that they're in and the area that they're in and the development, Mike Loxley, if he can continue this. Then yes, I can. But I think we'll see. But regardless, I think that's their peak of the season is that Syracuse game. So I think we all look back like, oh my God, we used to think Maryland was going to win 10 games this year.
Yeah, I think they win 8, but and if they do win 8 games, that's a heck of a start to Loxley's career at Maryland.
Oh, absolutely. Their team total was 4.5 before the year.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the big segment, which kind of you were probably wondering, what do you mean big segment? You just had 3 huge segments. Hail to the spread.
Just you wait.
Hail to the spread. Here we go. So we are going over a few games this week. Normally we go over 3. This week we will go over, how many do we even have? 6. So we have 6 games. We're going to briefly touch on each and make sure that we cover enough but not too deeply because we want to get you guys out of here and into the office or back home from the office. So we'll start with Temple and Maryland. We did just touch on it. Perfect segue. Temple is a 7-point dog in this one, which people are really surprised. Again, we just talked about the reactions with Maryland.
Yeah.
Vegas goes on and puts a 7-point spread on this game, and people are flocking to the Terps. Flocking.
Oh, yeah.
So Maryland comes off an unbelievable win over Syracuse. They've played 2 weeks in a row. Now they travel to Temple. Not a scary environment, and it's actually close, like we talked about. Philly from College Park, only a couple of hours, if that. So
Maryland fans nest well around the country too. They're a Big Ten team in that sense. A lot of Big Ten schools will have an away showing.
But here's the thing.
Fans.
Here's the thing. Whenever I see a line like that, a 7-point line against a team that you'd think, I mean, you asked me a week ago after that Syracuse game, what is Maryland going to be favored against Temple? You're thinking like 17.5, 14.5. Look, Temple's coming off a bye. Temple was not battle tested week 1. They're 1-0. They're a solid program. They're not a world beater. They're not a, absolute powerhouse, but they're good, and they're always contending in that conference. 7 points as a dog at home, a hangover game for Maryland. I think it's a trap game. I'll take Temple +7 here. I think that Maryland wins this one by a field goal.
Really?
So I'll take Temple here. 7 points.
Interesting. I'm going to go with Maryland.
Off a bye. Off a bye. I like off a bye.
Yeah, I respect that. But I think that Josh Jackson has shown that he is not Ty Pigrom. I think that he has shown that he is willing, able, and quite frankly excited to play in a high-flying offense that Loxley brings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could just be another statement similar to the one that they made last week if they go out and punish a team on the road. Don't think there's going to be any let-up if it does start to widen on the scoreboard. And I could see Maryland winning it by 2 scores. Wouldn't be shocked if the final margin is somewhere around 10. Mm-hmm. But I do think that they cover 7.5. But
it is their first road game of the year, Maryland's.
Right.
And Temple is off of a bye, hosting a team that's red hot, super confident. You got to always remember how confident teams come in after stuff like that. And I don't know how Michael Loxley is going to have his team ready after a game like that. That's one of the hardest things to do in coaching. And for those of you that don't know, I do coach, and I know I don't coach Division I athletics in a Big Ten school, so I'm not comparing myself to Michael Loxley, but a super tough thing to do as a coach, and people don't notice it enough, is how to rally your team to win another game after winning a huge game. How to ride a high while staying level. And that's why I like Temple here, +7.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a telling week for Maryland.
So now we go to Pitt, Penn State. What do they call this? The backyard brawl, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of James Franklin?
I think following a lot of calls for his head last year, he has come out this year and I think shown signs of improvement from a coaching standpoint. I mean, they throttled their opponent in week 1, but last week they took a deficit into halftime against Buffalo.
At home.
At home. I think that's a red flag. I think that's got to be a scary moment in Happy Valley.
This one's a noon game in Happy Valley, so you're not talking a whiteout or anything. Penn State, I think Clifford's good. He looked good. Obviously, like you said, they struggled in the first half, but then they rode through the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. You don't always have to bet spreads. You can take totals.
You can take totals.
You can take totals.
A source has confirmed.
Pitt has the number 23 defense in the country right now. Penn State's 3 for 17 on third downs.
Yes, they do almost all their work on the early downs.
The under is at 53.5. The total, I should say, is at 53.5. And if I were you, I would take the under. So I'm picking the under here. That's my favorite pick in this one.
That's some real faith in Pitt's defense.
I like Penn State to win this game 38-7.
Okay.
That's my final score here, and I think that's under 53.5.
Yes.
I mean, I know it's under 53.5, but I'm saying I think the game finished under 53.5.
Right. I don't have a calculator on hand, but...
So we move over to Morgantown, where West Virginia is abysmal. They just got blown out by Missouri, who got blown out by Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
I hate doing that, but yeah, I mean, that's worth comparing.
That's one of the few tolerable uses of the transitive property.
Right, thank you. NC State has only allowed 6 points this year. They've played 2 games, last week against Wofford, the week before that was against East Carolina. First game went under. Second game, I think, if anything, it went a couple of points over, but they only scored around 40 points, and it was a 0 on the other side. So I like the under, again, not to rain on anybody's parade here as that likes overs, but in this total at 45.5, West Virginia is not scoring a lot. I think they have around 20 points in their 2 games. NC State, I mean, to allow 6 points and then have to go to Morgantown against the team whose offense is as cold as ice. I mean, Frozen 2 is going to be about the West Virginia's offense. I mean, It is bad compared to its identity has always been its offense, and it is bad now. So I'll take the under here because it's at 45.5. It opened at 50, so it's moving very, 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 very quickly low. So I'll take the under here.
Yeah, definitely eat up the under. I think that trend is pretty notable. Quite frankly, this is going to be a game of mediocre football. A lot of maybe pick up a first down or two and then punt. I don't really think that either of these teams are going to have a field day of driving the ball down the field at will. I think that we might see a final score of somewhere around, say, 21-17, maybe 17-14. I think somewhere in that neighborhood.
And then we go to UCF and Stanford. This is a game that you're liking the spread. I'm liking the total again. Because Stanford's off a big loss to USC where they got obliterated. KJ Costello was out. He was listed as probable as of Thursday night. So Stanford's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, trying to prove something. UCF always has a chip on their shoulder. I think both offenses are high-powered. I think both defenses aren't that great because USC absolutely lit up a Stanford defense.
45 points.
So it's at 62. It opened at 58. I'm liking a 42-31, 42-35. I'd go as high as 52 for one of these teams to score in this game. And it's only at 62, so you're hoping that one of these teams scores 45+, and you're probably going to cover this total. So I'll take the over at 62. Again, it opened at 58. It's already gone up 4 points. It'll probably be at around 64 by game day, 63 by game day. 8 out of the last 12 Stanford games have gone over.
It's a good set.
Thank you.
I like UCF by 8.5. I think it's a prove it game for both quarterbacks. Neither of them have played great. They've both played one game this year. Brandon Wimbush was 12 of 23. Yes, 12 completions in his first
Brandon
game.
Wimbush isn't that good.
Right. But according to Rashawn Gary, he is the reason that he does not have a state title.
Shoot.
And Brandon Wimbush threw for 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. KJ Costello in his first game completed 16 of his 20 passes, about 150 yards, threw a touchdown. You're not seeing any great numbers in there. I definitely think that Costello going against a legitimate Big Ten defense in Northwestern was a little bit more of an obstacle, but I could see offensive coordinators trying to get both their quarterbacks going. I think UCF probably has a better chance to do it with the better defense, with playing at home. Stanford played their first game in Palo Alto, then made the short trip to Los Angeles to play USC. Now they board a flight. They fly cross-country. They will be playing this game 3 hours earlier than what they're used to. What time does this game start?
We're about to find out. Bad radio
we
here.
Yeah.
3:30. We got a 3:31
okay.
in Central Florida. So they're playing at 12:30.
Right, which is that's doable if you're Stanford, but you got to feel for him going across the country, coming off what I think was a very underwhelming showing. You could say that it was without Costello, but if your defense is going to get lit up for 45, then you've got a lot of film to break down throughout the week.
And now we go to, what do they call this? The Cy-Hawk Trophy?
Something along those lines. Something very Iowan.
Imagine Iowa. I don't even know. It's just a weird place. It's just a weird play. And I'm sure people have those thoughts about Michigan as well. Like, not the program. I'm talking about the state in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
But regardless, Iowa at Iowa State, this is always a good game. It's always extremely cornfieldish. Like, you just imagine eating a corn on the cob, watching this game, thinking, this is what Iowans feel is heaven.
You picture the football version of Field of Dreams.
Right, exactly. And this one's interesting, and I like to bring up trends, and I like to watch lines and see how they move to kind of let you guys know like where I would go on things, and whether you want to trust that or not is up to you. Please don't leave me as responsible for what you do here. This is just merely talk.
That means that
it's such a popular topic. I mean,
you cannot bill Brandon for your losses.
Talking about gambling 5 years ago and talking about gambling today and just betting on games in general, I mean, sports is just like a whole different ball game. It's like vaping. Vaping 6 years ago was like, whoa, what are you just trying to stop smoking? Now it's like everyone and their mom, literally everyone and their mom has a Juul. Not that I do, because that would be awful. However,
That makes two of us.
that seems like it's comparable. So Iowa State, we got way off base there. Iowa State, weird little thing I'm watching here. It started at 47. This total. I'm going totals all freaking weekend. Is what I'm looking at here. This is what I'm seeing. Okay, from what I'm seeing, everything's going totals. Okay, as a person who watches these lines move and sees where they go, spreads this weekend really aren't that attractive out of these 6 that we've chosen. I like the totals so far. Iowa State, Iowa. Under. You scream under. You're like, under. It started at 47. It's down to 43. This is going to hit 42, 41.5 before kickoff. I would grab it at 41.5 over. Because at that point in time, you're talking about like a 24-21 game. That's not even high scoring. That's a normal stand. That was the final score of Army, Michigan, which, took double overtime to get there. But regardless, was as ugly of an offensive game on both sides that you're going to see. And it still hit 24-21.
Oh, yeah.
So, and here's another thing. Iowa State, while 5 out of their last 6 games have gone under, 7 out of the last 7 of Iowa's on the road have gone over.
Wow.
And this is going down to, it could be at 40 by kick.
Yeah.
So I'll take the over in this one.
Yeah.
If it's under, like 43 is still a little interesting, but anything under 42, I would say over.
So Mr. Under breaks his streak.
Thank you.
I like the spread in this game.
I picked the over in UCF Stanford.
That's true.
Did I not say that? My bad. I meant to say that.
I think
Over in UCF Stanford.
I think you did.
Okay, thanks.
I like Iowa by 2.5. This is a nationally ranked team that will be feeding off the same fuel of the in-state rivalry.
Which is more likely to be corn fuel.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I read a book last year in AP Environmental Science. 2 years ago. I'm a sophomore in college now. Just about everything you eat, all the way down to meat, is made from corn, with what they feed cows in a slaughterhouse, all the way to
shout out Iowa, is what you're saying.
Practice. Yes, shout out Iowa. Shout out the work that they put in when no one is looking for the rest of this nation. So on that note, I think that the real Iowa, not the bootleg Iowa State, is going to win it by 2.5. Look, this is a game that you could see coming down to a field goal with 2 seconds left. It's a game that is going to be close throughout. It's a game where, quite frankly, regardless of where they're playing, the more talented team is going to skate by. I wouldn't say skate by. The more talented team is going to earn a hard-fought victory. But that victory, nonetheless, will be hard-fought. And Iowa State has been good in recent years. They were receiving AP votes to start the season. This is a team that probably could be ranked at some juncture in this season, depending on how they do within their conference. But right now, I think Iowa's just a bit more ahead of the curve. And I see them winning it and covering the slight spread.
So then we go to Michigan State, Arizona State. Spartans are favored by 14.
14?
I was waiting on you to say it, but it's all good. We got it covered. So the Spartans, a team that's looked great last week against a pretty lesser Western Michigan team, which did not look good at all. But, credit to Michigan State. They put up 51 points. I mean, that is not something you see very often from a team like this, who is traditionally very, very heavy defense.
And the offense even contributed to those 51. Can you believe it? The over-under on this game is 42 points. Michigan State is one of the best defensive units in this country. I wouldn't be shocked if Arizona State is held to single digits. I think Michigan State as an offense will probably score somewhere in the 25 to 30 range. Maybe they cash in on a couple short fields. Maybe Lewerke drives them down the field once or twice. I think they finish with somewhere. I'll go with between 20 and 30 points. If I had to pick a final score, I'll go 24-10.
Okay. So the spread
State
ended up it's at 14.5 now.
14
so I'll
okay.
use that as the line. 14.5 is interesting because that means Michigan State could win 28-14, and you're not covering, obviously, half point. So I hate to not go to a spread. I want to go to a spread because I haven't gone to a spread besides Temple. However, with the total at 41.5, it started at 45. Now it's down to 41.5. That's a pretty strong drop. Benjamin really, 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 really strikes my mind here. Michigan State's run defense is incredible. Its pass defense also pretty solid. Arizona State's offense isn't exactly a nuclear power, but Eno Benjamin alone really strikes me. There's two ways this thing goes. Either Eno Benjamin is going to keep Arizona State in this game single-handedly, or Michigan State's going to hone in on him, shut it down, and Arizona State's not going to be able to do anything. Here, Michigan State lost to N'Keal Harry last year. Will they lose to Eno Benjamin this year, is my question. Now, that, in my opinion, again, Arizona State 0-2 against the spread, Michigan State 1-1 against the spread this season. In my opinion, I think Eno Benjamin is both detrimental to the spread and to the total, but I think he's more detrimental to the total because I think it goes. If Eno Benjamin has a good game, this game goes over. Because if Michigan State, I think Michigan State wants to follow up that offensive performance from last week, and with the over only at 42, that means Michigan State pretty much has to win 35-7 and you're covering, or 30,
games in East Lansing too.
35-10 you're covering. So they can still put up like a decent amount of points. 35 isn't some sort of insane amount. 10 is extremely low for Arizona State. You have to think Eno Benjamin's going to break off one big run, right? Maybe not for a touchdown, but enough to get some points for Arizona State. In that same vein, this is a game for Michigan State that's a prove-it game. Like, hey, they beat us last year. This is a revenge game. This is to show everyone, look how serious we are. Look how much we've reinvented this offense. Look how much this defense means to us. Look how much this defense should be nationally recognized.
That's a good point.
There's a lot more motivation in this game for Michigan State than I think for Arizona State. That being said, both teams are 2-0. Both teams need this game for their resume. Arizona State could hit the scene hard. Eno Benjamin could hit the Heisman scene hard with a big game here, especially against the defense as touted as Michigan State's. So it's tough because Arizona State's 1-5 against the spread in their last 6. Michigan State is 2-10 against the spread against Pac-12 teams.
Well, good news is someone has to win the spread in this.
Right. The under is 7-1 in a Michigan State game in the last 8. But the under is only at 42 with an explosive offense in Arizona State, an explosive player in Eno Benjamin, and Michigan State is supposed to have one too, putting up 51 last week.
Well, you look at that 51 game.
And you saw Elijah Collins take the scene too for Michigan State. But go ahead.
Do you think that 51 is an outlier? Because they had one of the country's worst offenses last year and did not touch a thing. I mean, Michigan's offense was leaps and bounds better than Michigan State's, and they still brought in Gaddis to reinvent the wheel. This is a Michigan State team that didn't touch anything from one of the worst units. I mean, this thing's not going to self-correct. It's a train wreck. And if they put up 51 on Western Michigan, then
I don't think
is
that
it an
proves
outlier?
Yeah. And I get what you're saying. I guess you could say I'm bringing it up to be fair to them, okay? Because had Michigan done that to Army last week, we'd all be saying that too.
Oh yeah.
It would be the truth. Like, we would all be saying that. And in that same vein, we're saying it about Michigan's offense compared to Army. We're like, okay, Army has a good defense, but since Michigan had put up a world's amount of points, now we're questioning the offense. So, it's kind of like the same thing on the opposite side. It's okay, States puts up a ton of points on a bad defense, and we're bringing it up as, okay, maybe this offense is legit. So Elijah Collins, Eno Benjamin are responsible for this under. If those two don't do anything, this over doesn't hit.
I'm with you. And with that, staying with Michigan State, we can move into some Big Ten analysis through the first 2 weeks.
What are you taking in this game?
I'm taking the under.
Under?
Under. Yeah.
I'm going to take Michigan State, 14.5. Yeah, I think it's a prove game for them. I think they win 31-17.
Okay. So you think it goes over?
No.
If you had to guess.
If I had to guess. Gun to head. Gun to head 31-14.
Or, if you want to do it Michigan offense style, gun to foot.
Okay, let's move on to the Big Ten. Illinois, Eastern Michigan. All right, Brandon Peters. Eastern's a good team. Kinda, I guess, in MAC terms.
Eastern has a Chick-fil-A.
Look at that. Beat Coastal. Brandon Peters has been good. He's been good in Illinois. He hasn't faced anybody.
I was going to say, has he looked good against real defense, or has he looked good against low-end mid-majors?
I'm going to roll with Illinois here. Short and sweet. I'm going to roll with Illinois. But I think it's a decent game. I think like 31-21.
Okay. That would be entertaining. As media writers who are going to be longing for a press box, we're going to be sitting on couches this weekend watching these games. So that's going to be nice.
Georgia, Southern Minnesota. Let's both pick Minnesota and move on.
Yep. That's a 15.5 point spread right now. It's probably only going to widen before kickoff.
Yeah. UNLV and Northwestern. I think this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I think this is an upset alert
Really?
game.
In Evanston?
But I don't think it's the biggest one in the conference. I think I'm going to get to the next one. However, in Evanston, Hunter Johnson could hit. Look, Hunter Johnson, buddy, I hope you prove me wrong because you're supposed to be amazing.
Yeah, this is a 5-star transfer.
I hope he just launches into like stardom this game. I do, seriously.
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be good for the conference.
But I think Northwestern's going to win. I'm still going to pick them, but don't be surprised.
Yeah,
The Rebels are a pretty decent squad.
Yeah, this is a 19-point spread in favor of Northwestern. I could see UNLV making this a one-possession game, maybe even giving themselves a chance to win it late in the game.
Iowa State, I know you picked the spread in that game, so I'm going to give them my winner. I got the Cyclones.
Really?
I do.
Right.
I like Matt Campbell. I know they struggled against Northern Iowa, but it's at home. I think they're going to have a raucous crowd. I don't like Iowa a lot on the road.
All right.
I got the Clones.
Yeah.
Northern Illinois, Nebraska. Ba-da-doom, doom, doom. I don't know. Some kind of sound effect, Tad. That's our producer, if you don't know. Shout out, Tad.
Does a fantastic job.
Upset alert of the Big Ten this
Really?
week. Northern Illinois and Nebraska. Northern Illinois put up a solid fight against Utah. Utah has a top 10 defense nationally, and Northern Illinois put up 17 in the first half. And I think that they ended up scoring a couple of more after that as well. So Nebraska, I don't think they're going to lose. Again, I do not think they're going to lose. Let me reinstate that. I do not think they're going to lose. But I think there's a chance. I like Nebraska by a field goal, and I think people are really going to start panicking after this game about the whole Scott Frost thing. I don't think there's a reason for it. I think Scott Frost is in a Jim Harbaugh situation where he's never going to exit, but I don't think he's going to really do anything too crazy for his first couple of years. So I like Nebraska by a field goal. I think Northern Illinois gives them a game. That being said, they'll probably win by 40.
Yeah, and last week against Colorado, Nebraska gave up 375 yards through the air to one player, to Katie Dixon. They gave up 148 yards and a touchdown receiving. Is this defense going to be exposed at home by Northern Illinois? I think there's a chance.
I think there's a chance.
So let's move on to what I think is the best game this week. Purdue TCU. TCU is coming into West Lafayette as a favorite, a 2.5-point favorite. This is a team that has a 2 QB system. Michigan fans don't watch. You will get inspired.
It's a horror movie. It's better than It too.
Yeah, but on the other side of the ball, you have the opposite of a horror movie. You have a fantasy in Rondale Moore and someone who is just so fun to watch. This is a guy who put up 220 yards on 13 catches while hauling in a touchdown last week. He runs wherever he wants at will.
Rondale Moore do Rondale Moore.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Rondale Moore, if you are listening, then go out and put on a show.
Yeah, TCU is a team that I do not like them as a team because they always are weird. They're week 1, they are not like they are in week 2. In week 2, they're not like they're like in week 3. They're always a different team. They were consistent for about 3 years there. Patterson's a heck of a coach. Gets a lot of credit. It's deserved. Think about that Ohio State game a couple of years ago where they could not handle that Ohio State offense. Not comparing Purdue's offense to that. I am comparing Rondale Moore to that. Somebody that's not being mentioned enough in this game that I think is going to make a huge impact, George Karlaftis on the edge here. He's the true freshman that almost was a Wolverine.
Yeah.
I think he eats up TCU's quarterback.
Quarterbacks, plural. Quarterbacks.
So I'll take Purdue.
Yeah.
And, that Nevada loss, I think people are going to look back at as kind of like a light the fire under. I
That's
still
fair.
only think they win like
Early
7-8 games, but I think that's not even.
I think they win 6.
6 or 7, I would say. I can't say.
There's a
8.
chance they win 5.
But I like Rondale Moore in this game. I think Purdue wins this one somewhere around 42 to 31. That's it.
Okay.
42 to 31. They get a game-breaking touchdown with 3 minutes left in the fourth, and that's what wins in the game. So I'll take the Boilermakers, and that is our game of the week in the Big Ten.
That is.
And what was your pick?
This game actually opened as a pick'em, Purdue at home being kind of the natural favorite, but it is now trending towards TCU. TCU, as we said, is a 2.5-point favorite, but I think that it's real tough to stop Rondale Moore, and I think this defense gets it together a little bit, and I think we see a Purdue win.
Well, Dash and I are headed off to watch Thursday Night Football. We hope you guys have a good Friday. Enjoy the bye week. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show because you got nothing to worry about this weekend. Sweat over another team, my friends. We'll see you next Friday as Michigan takes on Wisconsin in Madison. This has been Hail to the Podcast, and as always, if you hail to the victors,
You'll hail to the podcast.
see you next week.